Well, good evening, Carlton supporters, one and all, on this very depressing Sunday evening in August. This is Vince Locissano, joined by Stephen Khatib, as usual, on a Sunday night for In the Blue Corner. This will be our last show after a Carlton match, that's for sure. But we will continue to have our program through the final series, if you're wondering. And we may even continue and do a summer series and encompass all sorts of other sports. But for tonight, we will be concentrating largely on the game that we've just seen this afternoon, that heartbreaking 1-point loss by Carlton to Collingwood of all teams, our traditional rivals. They'll be laughing at us for the next, not only 6 months until the start of next season. I reckon they'll be laughing all the way to the next final series. But anyway, we're going to be the butt of all jokes again for the next at least 6 months anyway, till the start of next season. But what can we say? We had everything in our own hands. It was ours to lose, I guess, that spot in the finals, and that's exactly what we did in the last 4 weeks, starting with a disastrous loss to the Adelaide Crows in Adelaide. The following 4 weeks, we just managed to lose every single match from winning positions on a couple of occasions. Last week, we had that heartbreaking loss to Melbourne with, a minute 30 to go. I think we were still, well in front and managed to lose it. I think we were 7 points in front, something like that, with about a minute and a half to go, and we managed to lose that game. And here we are again, after being, more than 4 goals in front, with only a quarter to go. We managed to have a goalless last quarter after having had a goalless first quarter, and managed to lose the game. I'm still speechless, Steve. I don't know how you feel about it, but when I say speechless, I've been talking non-stop for 2 minutes, but I don't know. I'm dumbfounded, I guess, is probably the right word. How are you feeling after that result? I'm just about numb.
Yeah, look.
How did we manage to lose that game? It's just beyond belief that after everything the team said that they would learn from last week and, got themselves, after a scintillating third quarter where they kicked 8 goals to 1, you would have put your house on it that we wouldn't have lost that game, but not with Carlton. We are really a Heckle and Jekyll, or what do they call it, a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde team. We really are.
Yeah, look, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. I'll be honest. It's when Collingwood started to kick a couple of goals late in that to the middle part of that final quarter. I thought here were the same types of signs. Here were the same types of mental errors that the players were making, and that they had made in previous games, and it was history was starting to repeat itself again.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, if you look at a team that you wouldn't want to be in that position against, it's Collingwood. Yeah, absolutely.
Because they've proven all year that they can come back from those situations.
Yeah. So you've got a perfect storm. You've got a team that really plays on ability or talent rather than structure, because that's essentially our goals are fast ball movement out of the middle, kick it long to the forward line, and pure brilliance or clearance work or skill.
Well, contested ball is what we seem to pride ourselves on all the time.
Sure.
So they're constantly kicking it to a contest. Why they can't kick it to a leading forward for a change is beyond me, but they keep kicking it up in the air.
Yeah. But what we do is we get the ball, get it out of the middle, fast break, off we go, and you've got a forward, talented forward, athletically superior forwards than the defenders. Let's be honest, in Mackay and Curnow. Get the ball. Goal, bang, and it happens. Bang, 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 momentum. However, structurally, as a team, whether there's no instructions or whether there's no, I'm sure there are instructions, but let's be honest, whether they're not clear enough, or who knows, they're not actually playing to those instructions.
Yeah.
And let's not get into tonight's program. You can call it a therapy session if you want it to be that. We can talk about it and we can, drown our sorrows in all of this. But we also, at some point, need to actually look at why we weren't good enough as well. And I don't mean that talent-wise. And I'm not saying we're the most talented team, but why mentally we weren't good enough as a team unit. And the example, I think, a classic example was when we just needed a point to draw. We shouldn't have been in that position in the first place, but we just needed a point to draw.
But we had the opportunity, and young Durden, rather than kicking it over to Harry, who was basically on his own and could easily have kicked the score from 50, 55 metres out, even if it was just a point, that would have been enough. But he kicks it long into the pocket and he kicks it straight to a Collingwood player.
But this is one example. And we're not going to get into that was a free kick, umpire did this wrong. You can go into all of those, right? Individual moments. It's not about that.
Anyone who wants to blame the umpires for our loss today is kidding themselves. I actually thought we had the much better. We were much better off for the umpiring today than Collingwood, that's for sure.
So let's be honest. That's just one example, and it's not about making an example of him. There were several, right? You can look at Curnow playing on. How many times did he play on? 2 or 3 times from 30 metres out when he had a set shot opportunity and just blazed away, almost Lairising. There were numerous examples. Yet Collingwood, as a team, absorbed the pressure, hit their targets, played through our defensive press, and then had an open forward line. Good luck to them. I mean, unfortunately, I hate to say this, but they definitely deserve the win. They play more as a team than we do. We rely on too much individual brilliance, and we need to use that individual brilliance, yes, but we need to actually play as a team. Otherwise, we're not going to be successful. And I don't know any teams that rely on just that pure individual brilliance. It's really about the whole team unit, and that's obvious in any finals successful side. You will see that's how they need to play. So look, that's my summation on that. Is this a lesson that we need to learn? I'm sure we're going to hear a lot of, this will eat at them over the pre-season. They'll come back more determined than ever, blah, blah, blah. Look, all that's great. But at the end of the day, it's not about talking. And I don't just mean it by the players. I actually mean it by the club. It's got to be more actually about just actions. And, and until really supporters see that, we're only going to be a team that teases its supporters with the upside, and the supporters get all excited thinking this is great, but really it's about the team. I actually prefer less talent and more team. That's what I'm looking for. But anyway, I've talked for longer than you have now.
And before we keep going, we should mention also that we welcome your input out there, our viewers. If you've got some comments you'd like to make or express your opinion on today's game, or like to ask Steve or I a question that you'd like posed on air, by all means, do that on our Facebook page, In the Blue Corner, or on our YouTube channel of the same name, In the Blue Corner, and we'll attempt to get your comments up on screen. Well, Steve, look, I think I've been saying it for weeks. Any team that starts the year with 8 wins and 2 losses after 10 games and then manages to somehow slip out of the finals, that's got to be a big cross. That's a fail for me. I don't care what Harry Mackay said on that show on Fox.
Did Harry say that though, or were they?
No. Listen, one thing that's changed dramatically, and what Harry's comments, and I have no doubt that
come on, they're not Harry's. Let's be honest. It's a ventriloquist.
The club would have provided him with the answers to all of those questions, because they would have insisted on knowing what the questions were before he even stepped foot inside the studio, because that's how they operate. So the Carlton Communist Party would have inquired as to which questions were going to be asked and told Harry to say that. Now, that just goes to show you the difference in culture that exists at this club now compared to the way it used to be when second place was not good enough, let alone making finals. Making finals was the absolute minimum expectation, or otherwise heads would roll. And heads sometimes even rolled even when we made finals but didn't get into grand finals. So it just goes to show you how much the standards have slipped over the last 20-odd years. Now, you know, when you start 8-2 and finish at 12-10 and miss out on the finals, that's unacceptable to me. That's just a big failure. It really is. Because you have to take it into account that you're in the top 4 and literally challenging for a top 2 spot. And all of a sudden you lose 8 out of your last 12 games, including the last 4 in a row.
So is
I'm sorry, but if Brian Cook comes out, and he did say, I think it was last week, that we shouldn't comment on what our season, whether it's regarded as successful or not, it shouldn't be disclosed now. We should assess it after the season's over. Well, guess what, Brian? It's over, and we're not playing finals again. And the president, less than 12 months ago, on the same day that he announced that they'd sacked David Teague, said that the minimum expectation next year would be to make finals. And guess what? We haven't. So, sorry, but everyone in that football department has failed on this occasion to deliver what the president said was the minimum expectation. So I'll be interested to see whose heads are going to roll as a result of this result today.
Well, look, I agree with you on that. Are we overestimating, though? Was 8-2 overachieving? And
no, there's no such thing as overachieving. To me, okay, if you've achieved it, you've achieved it. What do you mean overachieving? You've proven that you can do it. You've proven that you can beat Richmond, that you can beat the Western Bulldogs, that you can beat Fremantle, that you can beat, a lot of other very good sides. But you're not good enough to beat the really good sides, because we did not beat Geelong, we did not beat Melbourne, we did not beat the Brisbane Lions, we did not beat Fremantle on their home ground. We didn't beat. Probably the best team we beat all year was the Sydney Swans when we played them at Marvel Stadium. All right, Sydney and Fremantle here at Marvel, we had wins against them, not by a lot, but enough to say, okay, we should have been a team that would make somewhere between 5th and 8th.
So we've got a comment here, Vince, from Gina saying,
"Hi, Gina.
Disagree. Essentially, we've got too many players that are injured."
I'm sorry, Vince. Players injured. We have too many fringe players. It's simple. Oh, look. Again, we can't go making excuses. I'm sorry. I'm not prepared to make excuses for these players anymore. It's a mentality thing. It's not a It's not an ability thing. It's not a skill thing. It's purely up top. It's what's going on up here. And if people like Harry Mackay are actually saying and believing that 12 wins is good enough whether we make finals or not, well, guess what, Harry? You got your wish. You got your 12 wins and we're not playing finals. Right. I can tell you that there's not one Carlton supporter that should forgive this team for failing to make the finals after the position we were in. We should all be filthy on this. Filthy.
But
not just the players, but the entire club.
People would think, and this is the problem when you make these comments, Vince, and I'm in 100% agreement with you. And this, we win by a point, we make finals, but really that game should have been 5-6 goal, 3-goal win minimum, right? In that position we're in. But apart from that, and it's not just about that game, it's about the other games, the Adelaide game, but lots of others as well. You're not less of a supporter for having that expectation, but unfortunately, people think, and they will criticise your comments because they will think you are less of a supporter because you're actually expecting more from the club. No, that's not true. You're allowed to demand high standards from the club. Doesn't mean you don't love the club any less. You love the club more, as much as anyone else, but you've demanded those high standards. And that is exactly what we need to do as supporters, rather than, that's all right. You know, we love the boys. You know, of course we love the club.
Oh, it was an improve. It was an improvement on last year. You know, we only had 8 wins last year. We had 12 wins this year. Seriously, if you're going to compare yourself to failure all the time, well, yeah, you'll find some sort of silver lining to every cloud. But I'm sick of the clouds. I'm sick of the clouds that hanging over Icon Park or Visy Park or whatever park you want to call it anymore. Princess Park to me. I'm sick of those black clouds hanging over us that look like they have over the last 20 years. And seriously, we had a massive opportunity this year to at least play in the finals, at least. You know, I was thinking top 4 about middle way through the season. And here we are, we've slipped out of the 8. The only time in the entire season that we have not been in the top 8 is after round 23. Can you believe it? Every other round, we were in the 8.
But it shouldn't have got down to just that game and the whole hype around just purely making the 8.
It only got down to that game because we had 4 shots. We had 4 shots in the barrel, okay? And we lost all 4 of them. Adelaide, Brisbane, Melbourne, Collingwood. All 4 losses. Sorry. You've got to win at least one of those.
It's even
the Adelaide game should have been a given, really. We should not have gone over there and played the way we did. If we had have applied ourselves in that game like we applied ourselves in the last 2 weeks when we were absolutely desperate because we knew that our chances were running out, we probably would have beaten them and been able to enjoy these last 3 weeks. But no. Typically Carlton, you know, Jekyll and Hyde. And it's just got to stop. This mediocrity. I'm sick of being mediocre. I really am. I'm over it. And I'll be very interested to hear what our president's got to say about this season when he's asked. And I hope he is asked. And I hope that some of these media outlets start putting a bit of heat underneath some of these people at board level. Because to me, that's a big fail now. A big fail to have missed out on those finals.
So as a member, you're saying that you want your president or club essentially to come out and really look internally and examine themselves more and actually critique the season as a fail rather than try and put a spin so they can sell some more memberships for next year and ensure that everything's okay. Or if there is anyone to pay, it'll be some assistant coach that'll be sacked and they'll be hung, drawn and quartered and made an example of, rather than actually looking at the real issue and actually being honest with its supporters.
You know, isn't it interesting how Luke Sayers, when he wasn't even president yet, he was still just a board member, having been there for 9 years, called for a review of our team and our football department last year. Well, you know what? The way we've played in the last 12 weeks?
Yep.
I think that demands a review just as much as what it did last year. Because we've only beaten 4 teams in the last 3 months. And we're talking Essendon, who are just, you know, a rudderless ship at the moment. And that you know, big deal. We beat GWS over here. I think we beat Fremantle over here. That was a reasonably good win. And I think we beat, I'm just trying to think, another team. West Coast Eagles, who are bottom two. And we beat them over in Perth. And even then we had a really bad quarter where they kicked something like 7 goals against us. Now, to me, we are not in form. We haven't been in form for 3 months. If you ever wanted a reason to do a review on the football department, you'd be doing it right now after the last 3 months.
So we've got a few comments here. A president said that the expectation for this year was finals. We didn't make finals. Fail. Well,
yeah, I agree 100%, Ross. 100%.
Yep. Lana, our season is a complete failure after being 10-4. Sorry, Harry and the CFC media spiel. Yep.
Well, the other, anyway.
Well, so
you know. To me, there was an incident that happened in the last quarter that just sums up how, I guess, immature and how what's the right way to put this? How out of touch some players are with how crucial today was. And I'm gonna have a go here at our Coleman medalist, Charlie Curnow. And don't get me wrong, congratulations, Charlie. Great year overall. Well done on winning the Coleman medal.
Especially after the injury coming back, etc.
Yeah, especially all of that. But for him in that last quarter to have had that mark and spun around with no preparation, kicked it on his right foot, and didn't even make the distance. The ball went straight into a Collingwood player's arms. That just said it all for me. And as soon as that happened, I turned around to the person next to me and I said, that is going to come back and bite us in the ass.
But that was the second time he did it.
It did.
We lost that was the second time he did it. He also marked it and kicked a point around the corner as well, like that.
Yeah. So that's just a lack of awareness of just how crucial it is to be making sensible decisions under pressure and in the moment. I mean,
look.
We kicked 6 points, behinds in that last quarter from 10-8 to 10-14.
Let's be honest though. If you're
we let them kick 5 goals unanswered.
If you're 100 points up, you still shouldn't do that because you need to try. You need to practice the habits, the correct habits.
That's a bad habit, and they've got to get out of it. We've been mentioning about Harry as well. Harry sometimes makes those decisions, and at times it's cost us. So today, not so much. It was actually on song a little bit today, Harry.
The decision doesn't improve the angle. It doesn't do anything. All it does is give the player less time to prepare and set themselves up. So I'm hearing that we need to really think about what we stand for as a club.
Yep.
We need to not accept this sort of failure. And I think the players need to hear that definitely the supporters don't accept it. Now, whether behind closed doors something different is said or not, it's not the point. Publicly, it needs to be acknowledged for what it is. It needs to be acknowledged as a failure. And whether that's just the coaches being blamed, I don't think so. I think everyone needs to look at what it
should be a whole of club scenario.
Yeah, absolutely.
Certainly a whole of football department scenario.
And what annoys me, and this is really annoys me personally, but also from a club perspective, is things like they're more worried about bringing out cans of beer that have got a logo on it, getting it on the Channel 9 News so that, the Channel 9 News can run a story on Carlton to give it publicity, open up a new training facility, talk about that, send emails out saying, from the CEO around about the Brisbane game when they knew things were shaky to try and reflect and focus on the training facility.
After last week's disaster against Melbourne, what happens? We've just signed Charlie Curnow up on a 7-year deal to the end of 2029.
Yeah. Focus on football. I know that was the Richmond tagline, but really just focus on football and be honest with people and actually look your members in the eye and talk about and tell them how it is. But what they do is there's trickery. They actually trick the members into thinking the players are better than what they are or hyping the club up rather than just being transparent and honest and actually being more of a BP quiet achiever. They have to spruik it from the rooftops and set themselves up for failure. And it's all about spin. It's all about all these verbose comments.
Been saying it for a long time, Steve. It's all about smoke and mirrors at this place. It really is.
I mean, enough of it. Even to the point they're getting the news to cross to luncheons and functions and all those sorts of things to show. There's no club. I mean, don't be wrong. They're getting great publicity out of it. But focus on really, it needs to be backed up by actions.
Yep.
Doesn't it?
Yep, indeed. Well, I mean, over the last, especially say the last 9 years, there hasn't been any on-field success to talk about. So all they've kept doing is distracting us with off-field announcements about sponsorships or redevelopments or paying off debt or, something that is used to sort of say, hey, there's some good news over here. Yeah. Don't look there. Look over here. It's there, Anyway. All right, everyone. Love to know what you think. How do you feel after today's game? Where do you think we went wrong? Do you think Voss has got anything to answer for? I do believe that tactically, I think Voss has got a little way to go. I just think when things turn and we lose momentum and all of a sudden the opposition's got the run of it, I just don't know what we're doing to be able to stop that early enough.
Let's go through some comments.
Last quarter, I don't know what instructions were given out, but one thing I did detect, and I noticed on the clock there was still more than 10 minutes to go. All of a sudden, we started to do this short chip kicking backwards and try to waste time and keep possession of it. And there was 10 out of the 20 minutes still remaining. So basically half the quarter to go. And that's when I thought, here we go. We're doing this way too early. We need to win this game, not save the game, win it. Yep. And we were already starting to play keepings off like a side that was trying to run the clock down with only 2 minutes to go.
Agreed.
And that's when all of a sudden I think Collingwood smelt blood. And they thought, they're going to start doing this. They're trying to save the game. They're going to go into their shells here. Let's attack them. And that's what they did. No, good enough to execute.
We've got a few comments here, Vince. We'll run through.
What do we got here? Gina Harris. Hi, Gina. What's this? How actually call it a fail?
As in, I think there's an expletive there that's been used. How can you call it a fail? Serious injuries to key positions. It's not a club thing. It's not a culture thing. It's stupid decisions, panic football. Everyone knows switch play in the wings and play pockets.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone knows that we play. That's how we play, basically.
Right. So that's just how we play. So we should just accept that, and that's the end of it, do we? No, I'm sorry. I look deeper into the reasons why we play the way we play, why we accept the failures that we continue to, unfortunately, if you want to call it achieving failure. No, I think that there's a lot more to it than just positional changes and all that sort of thing, and injuries and all that sort of thing. Okay, so fair dinkum, everyone. I watched this show. You're doing politics. These guys did not lose our game today or last week. Didn't they? So they didn't lose it, Gina. You don't think that the players lost the game? So what do you think? Who lost it then? I mean, seriously, honestly, any supporters out there that are going to make excuses for failure are part of the problem at this football club. I am absolutely over it. Hearing and seeing supporters say, let's not go too hard on them. They tried hard. We had injuries, and all of a sudden all the excuses come out. It was some silly decisions and some bad positional changes. No. I'm sorry. I'm not prepared to accept that. And anyone who does is accepting mediocrity and accepting failure. I'm not prepared to do that. I would rather challenge the club and the team and the coaches to get better at everything that they do. Because if you don't, they're not going to get better. And supporters that accuse anyone like me who demands better and expects better and challenges the club to do better and suggest that we're not supporters or that we're not true blue Carlton supporters, I'm sorry, but I disagree completely. We're no less supporters than new people who are prepared to continually make excuses for failure and for mediocrity.
So on the politics,
you are part of our problem. That's what I would say to people like that.
On the politics thing, every everything that happens at a football club, and look, I think Vince, I came across to do this program with you because I like the way you think sometimes. or more often than not.
Oh, we don't always agree, Steve.
No, we don't. But I like the way you think deeply enough, and
Sure.
I've known you around the club, right? And essentially, you don't look at the you don't look at the symptom, you look at the cause. You look deeper. And I think you've been around the club long enough to understand these sorts of things and how they actually start somewhere. So any player or staff member that's employed is employed by someone. And so on and so on. And the chain goes on. And then the ultimate outcome is whether the game is won or lost. But that's 10 or 20 steps down the track, isn't it?
Yep.
So to think that politics isn't important, politics is hugely important. I hate to say it. I know we don't think the politics won or lost the game, but every decision that's made at the club is politics, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yep.
So I'm not suggesting.
But some people don't see it that way. They only see the politics when we start talking about, the Carlton board and the administration and decisions that are made up at that level. For starters, most of them don't even understand how it operates. They don't understand the motives behind a lot of these people that even go on the board. And they don't understand how the culture at the club starts at the top. We saw a lot of things happening in Essendon this week. Now, isn't it amazing how many people were saying, well, what's got to change at that club is from the top down, that the culture's got to change, that they've been wallowing in mediocrity for 18 years. They haven't won a final since 2004. Everyone, including past players like Matthew Lloyd, was saying it's got to change from the top down.
Yep.
Guess what? They've got a new president this week. Guess what else? They've just sacked the coach. So they're going to get a new coach soon. And if I was Xavier Campbell, I'd be getting pretty nervous about my position as CEO as well, just quietly.
Sure.
So obviously some people there are losing patience with the lack of success, the lack of standards, and the fact that their expectations are not being met. And if you don't demand things like that, nothing will ever change. These people will continue to get away with occupying their seats on the board. If the Carlton members, bringing this back to Carlton now, if the Carlton members don't demand better and don't demand more, well, they'll just keep saying, oh, well, we did pretty well. We had 12 wins and, we didn't make finals, but so what? Wasn't it a great year? No. If this was back in the days of John Elliott or George Harris and presidents like that who I guess instilled a winning culture into our football club where premierships were what we went for every year. Every year we were going for a premiership. Nothing less. Making finals, that's a given. That's an absolute minimum. What do you mean making finals? Of course we're going to make finals. We want to win a premiership. Yeah. But when was the last time you heard Carlton talking about winning a premiership? You know what I mean? The bar has come so far down that we're now sending a player onto a TV show, a very widely respected TV program on football, and saying things like, it doesn't matter if we don't make finals. It's still a successful year. I mean, when I heard that, I just couldn't believe my ears. It just reinforced for me how far down we've come with our standards and how our supporters have come to accept that, this is now good enough.
Well, I think that's because there's been a generational gap almost since we have been successful. Yeah. And a lot of the supporters, I mean, you and I know we can remember 95 like it was yesterday.
Of course.
Maybe not yesterday, but yeah.
Right. I can.
Yeah. Sure. So, I mean, we can remember that. But a lot of supporters...
27 years ago, mind you.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of them maybe were too young to even, or maybe alive, but too young to know 95. So essentially, you got a generation there of supporters that have got used to us being ordinary. Or are the ones getting so old now that, they're essentially not going to the foot anymore or anything like that. So Carlton now has almost been, I don't want to be I don't want to use St Kilda, but we've always, St Kilda used to be the butt of jokes, didn't they, back in the day, right? But essentially, really,
when you look at our performance over the last 20 years, we're now probably, regarded in the same way as, St Kilda was in the 70s and 80s. And, Melbourne was down there not making finals for, 23 years, I think, between 64 and 87. The Bulldogs hardly made the finals. South Melbourne, before they went to Sydney, hardly ever made finals.
Yep.
It's depressing, really, for a club that's had so much success to now be starved of it as much as we have, and having a golden opportunity to really cement ourselves into a final eight, and it not just in eighth or seventh. We had an opportunity to make top four.
Yep.
And we've blown it. Yep. Absolutely blown it.
Agreed. Especially with the draw this year.
Look, don't underestimate, though, how much this affects young people. I got text messages from my son who went to the game today with his mates. And he texted me after the game saying, "I'm never watching AFL again." Now, of course, obviously high emotion, really upset. I don't know whether this is true, but this is what he texted me. "I'm never watching AFL again. You don't understand how much that seriously hurts me."
Sure. Yep.
I've cried already. I'm done with this club. I don't care what happens anymore. I'm just so annoyed at all the heartbreak and things that could have happened but never do. Now, that broke me. That broke my heart to read that message. That was my own son saying, "I've had enough." And he's 18.
Yep.
He has never seen, he's not old enough to even remember, I don't think, last time Carlton made finals. I think he might have been 7 or 8 at the time when we made it in 2013. And he might have just remembered that game against Richmond.
So I've got a tactic. I've got a tactic I use with my daughter.
Yeah.
I actually say, "Oh, look, it's going to be a tough game today."
Yeah.
Yeah. I set her up.
Yeah.
I do the opposite of the club media department and the club PR teams.
You set them up for failure so that if you win, she gets a nice surprise, and if we don't win, she's not too badly let down. Yeah. But you can't water down the importance of a game like today, though, Steve, because today was make or break, and we all knew it. It was this is now or never.
Shouldn't have got to, but that's the whole point. It shouldn't have got to this game.
I know that, but it did. It did, and it really did build up in the minds of our supporters and young supporters. My heart goes out to young Carlton supporters. So it really does. Yeah. I feel like I've been spoilt growing up through the late 70s and right through the 80s and the 90s when we were always playing finals. We did not miss out on one final series between 79 and 88. So those 10 years, we made the finals every single year.
But it wasn't just about winning. It wasn't just about winning games. It was the champions that we had, and it was what it meant to be a Carlton supporter.
Yeah.
What it meant. It was something very unique.
Well, we were bulletproof. We felt bulletproof. We were proud.
Yeah.
We were so proud to be Carlton supporters. We'd walk out with our chests, chest out. No one would ever have a go at you for being a Carlton supporter because, you had so much success. And, we should never apologise for that. And I just think that it's just that culture has just gone and it still is yet to be reinstalled into this football club. I'm sorry.
We've got a comment here from Tony.
Tony Malia. Good evening to you, Tony. George Harris demanded premierships and achieved that. He certainly did. He achieved it when he got Ron Barassi to Carlton. Barassi ended up coaching us to premierships in 68 and 70. Then, of course, he left and John Nichols took over and coached us to a premiership in 72 as a captain and coach. And then, of course, after a few years where we were sort of there and thereabouts but not really challenging, we had a few issues around coaching. Alex Jesselenko took over. And again, the standards were win a premiership. And guess what he did in his first full season as coach? Captain coach, by the way. Another premiership in 79.
So
when David Parkin came to Carlton, he was told in no uncertain terms, we expect to win premierships. He won 2 premierships in his first 2 years. He had a brilliant team who had a fantastic culture because they demanded success off each other. They challenged each other. I wonder how many of these players actually challenge each other and look each other in the eye and say, mate, I don't like the way you played on the weekend. You did this on that occasion. You did that. You should have done this instead. This is what they used to do on a Sunday morning. They used to get together at the club. It was called a pleasant Sunday morning. They used to have a little soccer game and all that sort of thing. And they'd get together and have a few beers and talk about the game and used to look each other in the eye and tell each other what they thought.
So
I wonder how many of our players do that.
I know that. So there's a fine line there. We can't live in the past, yet we need to value the past.
Yeah.
And also,
but there are lessons. But there are still lessons we can learn from that.
So I think one of the knocks on the club is that they don't engage the past players enough, other than just for those annual premiership reunion type functions to try.
Yeah, where they can make money out of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
The only time they bring the past players in is when they think they can make money out of them. Yep.
Yeah, and I've spoken to past players, not able to name names or anything like that. And the feedback I've received is essentially the club don't want us around. They don't want us to engage with the players. Now, I'm not saying the past players have got to go and give goal kicking practice to Harry Mackay or anything like that.
No, we're talking about little word of advice here, little word of advice there.
And I know it doesn't mean necessarily much, but those players who maybe played in those positions as the current day players, or maybe wore the same Guernsey number that was successful, names on the locker, right? In the club. Yep. They're the sorts of relationships, the sorts of bonds that need to occur more. So that's the sort of stuff that needs to happen a lot more. So they get an understanding of what that culture really was. I know that isn't occurring at the moment, unfortunately.
Not at all. Steve, let's go back to the game. Just a quick recap because we haven't even really gone into much detail on the game. Final score, Carlton 10-14-74. Were beaten by Collingwood 11-9-75 by one solitary point. Even a draw would have got us into the finals.
Yep.
First quarter, Carlton goalless. 3 points to Collingwood's 3-5-23. So we went in with a 20-point deficit at quarter time. A very even second quarter saw us only knock off 1 point from that deficit. So 19 points at halftime after both sides kicked 2 goals each in the second quarter. Then the third quarter, we really turned it on, didn't we? I mean, we really looked good. I must say, we looked all over winners, kicking 8 goals, 3 to Collingwood's solitary 1 goal and 2 points. You know, to turn a 3-goal deficit into a 4-goal margin, favourable margin for us at three-quarter time was a fantastic quarter. But then again, we went into our shells. 6 points in the last quarter. And Collingwood kicks 5 unanswered goals, 5-1 to win by a point.
So if you look at the game, rather than going through every quarter, if you just look at the basic momentum swings of play, Collingwood.
I think the largest margin we had was 25. I think 25 points.
Yep,
it was definitely more than 4 goals. I remember that.
So the way when Collingwood were able to move the ball in that sort of precise manner, so quickly up and down the ground and transition from the defensive 50 to the forward line, their forward line, they were unbelievable. However, when Carlton were on top, Collingwood was struggling to clear the area. They couldn't hit a target. They had no overlapping run at all. And Carlton made them look like a bottom 4 side, really, to be honest. It was all one-way traffic.
Yeah.
However, there's no other than that, Carlton has no other game.
No.
If they're not doing that, they've got no other way to play. It's that frenetic play.
Yep.
Forward line pressure and that quick entries in, or nothing.
Yep.
Whereas Collingwood, as soon as they were given half a chance, bang, almost sort of sliced us up right through the centre, didn't they?
Yep.
And that was why they were always a chance if we would have stopped playing the way we were. There isn't another way to play, unfortunately, for Carlton. They've really got to develop more strings to their bow, more options, more a way to play that isn't just that fast, frenetic play. I'm not suggesting the slow possession style because they went too slow, but there's got to be another gear there that they can use.
Yes, indeed. All right, let's get to the votes, shall we? Our 3, 2, and 1. Who did you give your votes to today for Carlton?
So I thought it was a tricky one. I actually thought Chera was pretty good. I gave him 1 vote. I thought I gave him a bit of a. I think we've knocked him a few times, haven't we? It's almost like he's watched the program. I gave him 1 vote. I thought he was pretty good today. He kicked a nice goal there as well. It was more than 1. Did he kick 2 goals or 1? But
2.
Anyway, 2. That's right. Yeah. And I thought he was better and he used the ball better today.
Yeah.
Doherty, I thought was fantastic. I really did. And I've got to give Cripps 3 there. I thought I know
we've got to stop doing this. I'm going to have to go first for a change one day.
Okay.
Because they are exactly my votes. I gave 3 to Cripps, 2 to Doherty, and 1 to Chera. I thought it was
I'll ask you next time. Next year.
Welcome return to form for Chera today. He really needed to do something and prove that he was worth recruiting, and he really did step up today. So I was impressed with his effort, not only for the 27 possessions and the 2 goals, but also 7 tackles, which was a game high for us, as well as Doherty. Doherty also laid 7 tackles. I gave him the 2 votes, 29 possessions. He kicked the goal as well. He was our general there in defence and also through the midfield. And I just thought Patrick Cripps at times looked like he was carrying the side on his shoulders. I mean, honestly, he copped a really big knock, and I thought he's broken his ribs here. He looked like he was struggling to breathe and struggling to.
Yeah, it was friendly
even straighten up. His posture looked terrible at that point when he did the injury, but he just kept going like the bull that he is. And 35 possessions and 5 tackles, but just kept willing himself right through that whole game of football. And can't speak highly enough of Patrick Cripps today, especially in the absence of Sam Walsh, who, when I read, was out with back soreness. I think, what? Is this club being fair income? I mean, back soreness, okay. How about being a bit more specific? Because, seriously, Patrick Cripps played with back fractures last year.
Yeah.
You're trying to tell me that back soreness is going to keep Sam Walsh out of a game like this? That's the sort of excuse, if you want to call it that you'd give a player for being rested. We're going to rest him. We're going to manage him this week. He's got a little bit of back soreness, so we'll just give him a bit of a rest. He could play if you really had to, but we thought his back's a bit sore, but we'll rest him.
He doesn't want to take the flight.
That's the sort of thing you'd expect for
back soreness. That's a flight to Perth.
Not make or break game where you have to win to make the finals and going to rest him with back soreness? Come on. Look, I don't believe that in the pink fit that's the reason he was out today. I reckon there'd be a lot more than that. It's either nothing to do with his back, or if it is his back, it's a lot more severe than what they're letting on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Come on. No. And then you see the cameras on him in the coach's box, and especially at the end there, he had his head in his hands, probably thinking, "Oh my God, I should be out there." But anyway, he was ruled out. Interesting that George Hewitt never played. They named him in the side.
Ducks and breaks. Yeah.
Tom DeConning didn't play. They just about wore him out for the whole year. That's the reason I don't think he played, because these last few games were terrible. And probably because he'd been worn out playing in the first ruck when he wasn't ready for it. Anyway, I want to give if you like, a mention, even though not in the votes. I thought Young was pretty good, and I thought Cottrell played pretty well. Even O'Brien tried hard, 19 disposals, 8 marks.
I've got one for you. I thought
didn't really give us the drive I was expecting today.
No.
What did you think of Zach Williams' game? First game back for most of the season, really.
I was sceptical at why they brought him back in.
That was another gamble, if you ask me.
Yeah, huge. It just went and showed how big this game was. Obviously, you don't want to leave anything on the table, but it was a gamble. Knowing they probably had the week off, though, it would be something that they might want to do had they make finals next week. Look, he tried hard, I must admit. He did try hard, but didn't have a huge effectiveness. I was actually concerned, Motlop got another game, yet he was actually very good today.
I thought Motlop was really lively around the goals, and his 2 goals to the City end were pretty scintillating snapshot goals. And I think he gave us everything that we could expect out of a small forward today.
Yeah, and I
whereas Durden had exactly the same amount of possessions and exactly the same types of possessions.
Yep.
4 kicks and 2 hand passes. They both got that, but Motlop looked so much better. And, of course, Durden stuffed up there right at the end. And honestly, I think we finally paid the price for continuing to play someone who I think at some point should have been sent back to the VFL. I think we played Durden in way too many games where he wasn't performing. To me, that wasn't the best example of selection integrity that I saw this year. He should have been dropped a few times, and he wasn't. And now we've finally paid the price for that today.
Yeah. Look,
Stocker also had a very quiet day, only the 4 kicks, 1 hand pass. Silvani, 2 kicks.
Look, Silvani, he tries hard every week.
He tries hard, but I'm just wondering whether he gets enough of the ball.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, sometimes he has these quiet ones. Look, overall, I think even Setterfield had a reasonable game, 24 possessions. But, McGovern probably did his job. Same with Wiedering. He's kicked 1 goal today as a small forward. So, I don't know. Look, it's a 1-point result. 1 point you can say, and if Durden kicks that ball to Harry Mackay and Harry happens to kick a goal or kick a point, we'd be celebrating right now that we made the finals. But we didn't. And I think you've got to look at the reasons why we didn't.
But should we be – I mean, it's a bigger picture, right? It's not just the point. It's a whole lot of factors. It's the way we went about it, right?
We were 25 points in front, early in the last quarter. And from that position, after kicking 8 goals to 1 in the third, why did we go back into our shells? Why did we try and save the game rather than continue to play in that same manner that we did in the third quarter and actually run away with it? Because I thought we were going to run away with it. But then we went back to the old Carlton. Dr. Jekyll went away and Mr. Hyde took over. So we're not only guessing what type of Carlton team's going to roll up from week to week. Sometimes 2 different teams run out after different quarters.
Yeah, look, you're right. It's very different.
All right. Well, anyway,
on a positive note, we did win the VFL against Collingwood. That was probably going to be a sign of better things to come for the day.
You know what that means? Whoopie-doo.
Yeah, I understand.
VFL. Who really looks at it seriously? I mean, it's a basket case of a competition.
It is.
Teams don't necessarily place a great importance on winning. They're talking more about developing certain players in certain positions. They use the VFL team to do that. The actual winning of a premiership in that competition is hardly given a mention. But anyway, yep, sure. We're in the finals in the VFL. I hope you enjoy going to your VFL games during September, everyone.
Look, we just fell in
Frank
there.
Acker. Hi, Frank. Nice of you to join us. Look at these two wogs who have never played footy, talking about like they know. Voss cost them the game. He has no B game, and Fisher, Durden, and Owies are no good.
Yeah. Well,
how can you play your slowest defender on their fastest forward? What do you two wogs think? Not like your comment. What? Will not like your comments will mean anything to me. Oh, that's nice of you to say that, Frank. That's very classy stuff.
Look. Anyway, everyone's allowed their opinion. Everyone's allowed their opinion. It's okay.
No, that's okay. All right. Well, apparently we don't know what we're talking about because we've never played the game, Steve. So the only people who should ever comment on football, including all of those people on shows like Footy Classified and all the Foxtel programs and all of the other commentators, shouldn't say a word because we've never played the game apparently. So
it's all Vince. It's all good, mate.
And you've given your opinion there, Frank, in that comment. But how many games did you play of AFL football? I'd be interested to know.
Vince, it's all good. It's all good. Let's not be snowflakes about it.
I'm not. But it's interesting how all of a sudden we're labelled as two wogs who don't know anything because we've never played the game at the AFL level, and yet he's doing exactly the same. So, Frank, can you tell us what AFL team you played for, seeing you've got an opinion?
Look, it's all right. No, he's not expected to play, but what he's critiquing our knowledge. And look,
that's
Frank,
fine.
Frank,
but what I'm trying to say, Steve, is it's not fair to say that just because we haven't played the game at AFL level that we're not entitled to an opinion. That's a ridiculous thing to say.
Correct, but everything's allowed. Everyone's allowed opinion. Now, these programs are for supporters talking about football. You would never, Frank. I'm going to be respectfully retort his comments. Okay, so it's all good. It's all good, and I'm not offended at all. In fact,
no, I'm not. I'm not offended. I just don't agree with it.
I'm all good. This is fine. So, number one, you're never going to get an AFL player come on one of these supporter-led programs to talk about the club internally like that because A, they're not going to get paid to do it, so they wouldn't do it for nothing.
Yep.
And B, they've probably got horses in the race or friends that they don't want to offend. So for us, it's all about the club. Simple as that. Number one. Number two, I think we're talking in the context of being. I'm a 36-year member. You're probably I don't want to show your age. You're probably more than a 36-year member, Vince, right? Essentially, right?
Well,
so we're talking.
I'm a life member, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, life, but work out the year, okay? With a significant.
Sorry, I was bestowed life membership by the club, yes.
Sure.
But yes, I've been a member for multiple decades, yes.
So we're not in the inner sanctum to absolutely know everything. What we do know, though, off field is a lot of things around the inner sanctum because we've actually been reasonably close to that part of it. Okay.
Yep.
So these are just opinions. Voss was our coach today. Definitely, there'll be part of that for sure. But I don't think it's just purely Voss being our coach. I think it's a combination of many factors. And I think that's what we tried to unpack in the show. So I don't think it's just as simple as that. As for those small forwards, we haven't got the mix right. We haven't been able to integrate. It's been all about the two talls. And I don't think the whole year we've really got the smalls right. Let's hope, fingers crossed, Motlop is going to be better for the rest of his career.
Oh, look, he's got some tremendous upside. You think he's got a lot of potential. Yeah.
Well, there's no doubt our small forwards haven't worked this year. Have been dysfunctional. To put it bluntly, that's been the case. There you go. Anyway, but hey, great to have an opinion. And Frank, welcome you to keep commenting, mate. It's all good. We're not precious. Unlike other programs. So long as,
but look, I welcome comments. And you don't have to make comments that agree with us. You can disagree with our opinion. But don't start saying that just because we haven't played the game that we're not entitled to it. Because that's what basically he was saying at the start.
But
look at these two wogs reckon that they know it all. and they've never played the game.
So as a WOG, as a WOG that hasn't played the game.
I've never said that we know it all.
No, but I've coached elite sport, so I can speak it from that point of view. But that's another conversation. Definitely, we haven't played the game. However, we can definitely comment on what we see after watching him every week for 30 odd years.
Correct.
And our opinions.
Yep. What was the question that he asked, Steve?
How do you play the smallest?
There was a question at the end of that.
Yeah. So essentially, Fisher, Durden, and Owies are no good. How can you play your slowest defender on their fastest forward? So that was probably the comment was more around the fastest
You're
forward.
talking about Jamie Elliott?
Yeah.
On who was playing on him? Marchbank?
I think he was, yeah. It's hard to work it out sometimes with all.
I think it was Marchbank at the time. They do swing, they do chop and change a lot in our defence. But yeah.
It's always been a challenge though, because we haven't really got a fast defence other than Sard, and you're robbing Peter to pay Adam. Aren't you really? Literally. Like you got Sard running up one way, and if it doesn't work, you're losing it on the other side. But hey, it's just a WOG given an opinion.
There are clearly some deficiencies we have in our team. I come back to the ruck, and I come back to the wings, and to an extent, I think you've just identified maybe a couple of defensive posts need to be filled by players that can, that have a defensive side to their game rather than this attacking defender mentality. Yep. So I think we'll get better in that area. They're going to have to debrief on this season and really look at where our deficiencies are, what sort of players we need to trade out, what sort of players we need to trade in, and then go to the draft and try and select players that are going to help fill those gaps.
So, Vince, we draw that game. Let's say, I know if my uncle was my auntie and all that sort of stuff, but if we draw that game, let's say Durden kicks it to Mackay, Mackay gets a point, we draw the game. We're a different program, different sentiment this evening. We go to Brisbane. Now, as awful as Brisbane were last week, don't think they're probably going to put in another one of those performances again.
No, that would have been smarty.
Yeah, absolutely. So would have been a really tough trip, wouldn't it, for us? Would have been a tough ask. I mean, yes, you got to be in it to win it. And we lose that game. What's the difference in the season?
Well, the difference is that you've actually made the finals. Yep. And you've played in a final and had the experience of playing in a final.
Yep.
In a cutthroat final. And I think that sort of experience is actually, win, lose or draw, is very valuable for your players. I will always maintain that. And that, I remember when Richmond initially were the butt of all jokes for finishing ninth every year. Then they started making the finals and they played a couple of elimination finals. I remember when they went to Adelaide and played Port Adelaide one year, and again they got eliminated in that first one. So those years give you that taste of what it's like to be in finals. And I'm not saying it has to be done that way, but I do believe it's beneficial to your team to play in finals. And you never know. Once you do make the final eight, it's a whole new ballgame. Yeah. It's a whole new series. And, we lost to Brisbane 2 weeks earlier. Who's to say we couldn't go up there and beat them this time? A few positional changes. No two games are exactly the same. The weather's not necessarily the same. The time of the day or night is not the same.
What I'm trying to say,
team won't be the same.
What I'm trying to say is, though, nonetheless, these issues are still there. These gaps are still there, regardless. And if you're making the point that whether you made finals and went out after the first one, or whether you didn't make them at all, those deficiencies are still there. Yes, you're right. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah,
the deficiencies are still there, but it doesn't mean that you don't gain some valuable experience by playing finals. I think you do.
Agree.
That's my view anyway. Any other questions or opinions that are being expressed on our Facebook page or our YouTube channel that are worthy of mention? If the answer is no, then it's no. Johnny Redmond, you have been a goal umpire for years. What's that supposed to mean?
I think.
Hi, Johnny.
I think John's trying to fly the flag in your defence, pardon the pun.
Right. As in what I've done at AFL level. I haven't done that at AFL level, John. More like junior footy level at the local junior footy club. That's the only goal umpiring I've ever done. All right.
Look, did you get a pie? Did you get a pie and a soft drink from the canteen for doing it, or
no? Not even that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and by the way, I must say commiserations to my daughter Sienna for yesterday, because her team unfortunately lost the grand final in the Essendon District Football League. So not a good day yesterday, not a good day today. So we've had a pretty lousy weekend for football results this week. Anyway, there's always next year, sweetheart. Now, what else? Steve, there was something else you wanted to discuss, I think, tonight. Refresh my memory. I've just drawn a blank. You mentioned it to me off air before.
Yeah, we mentioned the beer. I did mention the beer one in passing, the launching of the
the launching of the beer, and get Stephen Kernahan down to the club. And
yeah,
what do they call that beer again?
Baggers 22. So
Baggers 22 beer. I wonder how many cans they're going to sell this week after crashing out of the finals race.
Well, that's embarrassing, isn't it? Now, really, let's be honest. I mean, really,
that was a bit presumptuous, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
But don't worry, go and have a look at the club's new facilities during the week and put a smile on your face.
Geez, they're beautiful facilities. Let's talk about that now, shall we?
What a successful board we have.
Yeah. My house is bigger than your house, sort of thing, right? Yeah.
I will certainly be looking with interest, or listening with interest, to what both Brian Cook and Luke Sayers have to say about the Carlton 2022 season. I'll be very interested to hear what sort of emphasis is placed on certain things, and how much they're going to try and sugarcoat it, or whether they're not going to sugarcoat it at all. I know one bloke that passed away less than a year ago, who, when he was president, wouldn't have sugarcoated anything. He would have said, unacceptable. We have to make finals. To be in that position and then crash out of the finals is unacceptable at Carlton. That's failure. And we're not here to fail. We're here to succeed. And success is defined by playing finals and winning premierships.
Yeah.
Nothing less. And unless you set your sights at that, you're never going to win it. You're never going to win it unless you set your sights there. And teams have proven that you can actually improve so dramatically that you can go from second last on the ladder one year to halfway up the table the following one, and then win the premiership the year after that. That's what Melbourne did.
Yeah.
And, the Bulldogs, mate, did it from 7th position 6 years ago. So you can actually win a premiership even though you're not in the top 4. It's not as likely that you will, but it certainly is achievable.
But we're after. I think the supporters, sure, premiership. That's our wildest dreams. But we're after a brand of football that stacks up and is consistent and holds.
But I'm glad you've raised that, Steve, because if there's one thing that I want to draw the attention of our Carlton supporters too, is it's the quarters that we've won this year.
Yeah.
If you go through the games one by one, I'm pretty confident you'll find that we've lost more quarters than we've won.
Probably right. Yeah.
Even though we've won 12 and lost 10, there were a lot of games, even though those ones where we sort of fell in by a point against Hawthorn or 3 points against Port Adelaide, where we were losing at least 2, if not 3, out of the 4 quarters. But we had a really big one, a bit like today. Today again. The difference was that we lost this one by a point, unlike the one against Hawthorn where we won by a point. So we've had a lot of games where we've lost at least a couple of quarters, sometimes even 3 quarters.
Yeah. When we'd win a quarter, though, we'd win it by 4 or 5 or 6 goals, wouldn't we? So it would make
quite
up
often we put on those bursts, don't we? Like we did today in the third quarter. What a magnificent quarter of football we played. I mean, that was as good a quarter as we had played all year.
Yep.
Seriously. But gee whiz, do we know how to go into our shell when we're all of a sudden trying to hang on and save a game rather than win it? And inevitably we come up short, like we did last week against Melbourne and like we did this week against Collingwood.
Yep, absolutely.
Next slab will be Baggers Hoodwinked. Good one, Peter. That's a jumper punch term, of course. Rocco and the boys on the jumper punch. I'll be very interested to hear what they've got to say on Tuesday night. If you're out there wanting to hear 3 hours of sheer entertainment, make sure you tune in on Tuesday night at 8 o'clock on.
They record that program. They record that show on a Sunday night. So essentially, you talk about Raw to the nerve.
Oh, they will be recording it right now, literally. Yeah. They would have come back from the match. So it'll be full of raw emotion. You can bet your life on that. You can bet your life that Mars or Marcello, whatever you want to call him, will be scathing. You can bet your life that Rocco will not be sugarcoating his opinions on how the team was coached and how the team played. Paul Sebastiani, as usual, is quite analytical, and he won't take a backward step either. So. Make sure you watch the boys on Tuesday night. It should be really worthwhile on the jumper punch. So, yes, you're probably right, Peter. Hoodwinked 2022. That'll be the next beer that they come out with. It's the next one they should come out with anyway. Well, Steve, if there's nothing else you want to discuss.
No.
We've got a bye next week, as in the whole competition has a bye. It's the finals week bye. So we're going to get into a few juicy topics next Sunday night at 8 o'clock that are nothing to do with playing because there's no matches to talk about. But we'll certainly get into some hot topics. And, of course, what we should note is that the deadline for nominating for the Carlton board, if you wanted to put yourself up for election in February, the deadline is at the end of August. Can you believe it? I mean, it's almost a 6-month wait from when you nominate till when the election's held. Anyway, it's not an election that's done at the AGM. It's actually done in advance of the AGM, and the results are read out at the AGM. So,
right.
If you're interested in going for the Carlton board, it's from now on going to be 2 positions every year, not 3, because it's only 25% of the board that goes up every year, and the board is made up of 8 people. So I'm not sure which of the 2 that are going up, Steve. Do you happen to know which ones they are? Now, don't forget, earlier this year, it was Luke Sayers, Paddy Kinnersley, and Greg Williams who went up. So it'll either be, and now the previous year to that was the previous president, Jeannie Pratt, who's left the board, and Craig Matheson. So it won't be Craig Matheson. So it's more likely to be people like Tim Lincoln or Rob Priestley.
Talent and culture.
Or Lara Carey. Yeah, someone. I think it might be 2 out of those 3.
No, I think it would be
2 out of those 3, I reckon. Oh, no, David Campbell. Correct. There's another one.
A talent and culture.
David Campbell, the one whose swim lane is people and culture and hiring people and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And he's not good enough to be on the Carlton subcommittee to choose a coach, apparently.
Yeah.
Are you nominating yourself, Vince? Lana, I hasten to say that no, I won't be nominating to go onto the board myself. The way they make it almost impossible for any candidate through the usual, what do they call it? The usual
nominations process.
Nominations. through the standard AGM, where a certain amount of positions become vacant every year. Anyone who puts themselves up for election there, unless they're extremely high profile and they're likely to, make news in the media, or they're a very popular past player, probably got little to no chance of getting in, because that's one of the reasons they make the annual general meeting in February. Because everyone by this stage is looking forward to a new season and probably doesn't want to see much change take place.
Absolutely.
So they know that, and that's why they hold it in February. I think that's an absolute disgrace. If I was in charge, I would be saying that the annual general meeting must be held before the conclusion of the calendar year. And at a probably something like at least 3 days prior to Christmas Day.
Well, that should be in the Constitution.
So in other words, if Christmas Day is on a Monday, it's got to be held at the latest on the Friday the 22nd.
Yeah.
Right? So I just don't believe that it's fair or transparent or timely that an annual general meeting for the previous year be held a couple of months into the following season, when we're literally less than a month away from starting that season. I mean, if there was actually a board challenge of any description, people are going to say, well, hang on, we're about to start a new season. Why are we challenging the board now? So that's one of the reasons that they do it, because they know that that's how people will think.
Absolutely. The Constitution.
So it's all tactics.
The Constitution should be changed. The Constitution should be changed.
It should be, but who's going to change it?
No.
Who's going to change it when it favours the existing board? Tell me. The existing board's in charge of its own rules. Are they going to introduce a rule that doesn't advantage them, the incumbents? No.
Yeah. No. Agreed.
But does this get exposed? No, it doesn't. Do the Carlton supporters care? Probably most of them don't.
No, they don't.
Until the club is on its knees one day and they want to get rid of the board, and then they say, why can't we get rid of them? Oh, because of all of these things. Don't forget, the rules only really need to be applied when things are not good. You don't let the existing board off the hook because things are good at the moment. You need to have rules in place that allow you to make change when things are not good.
Correct.
And that's the only time you'll know the strength or weakness of your own rules.
Yeah, I wonder if you can nominate yourself to different portfolios like ScoMo did under the rules.
Let's not bring that into it, Steve.
I'm joking.
Let's not bring that into it, shall we?
I'm only joking.
Do you need to be wealthy to get on the board? Do you need to be wealthy to get onto the board? Technically, the answer is no, Lana. You could be the proverbial street cleaner and put yourself up for board.
Correct.
However, to be invited onto this board when there's a casual vacancy, let's just say that you need to be someone who's well connected with the existing board.
Correct. I agree with that.
Otherwise, you won't be invited on.
If you look at Essendon as an example, a pharmacist who was a passionate coterie member for many years put her name up to run for the board.
Yep.
Trying to do all the right things, and they rolled out Kevin Sheedy and Wellman up against her.
Yep.
No chance. Right now, that was a tactic. Because,
of course,
to guard a seat, to guard a spot. How many Essendon members are going to vote against Kevin Sheedy? Now,
how many Carlton members voted against Greg Williams?
Correct. So,
see what I mean?
Now, if you then look at the performance of the football department that Kevin Sheedy oversaw at Essendon,
and that was his swim lane, was it? Football. Funny that.
Yeah, that's his swimming. Yeah, right. So that's his swim lane.
Yeah.
Well, and so back to the comment earlier, had we played football? No. Yes, of course, he's played and coached football and is an AFL Hall of Famer and so forth. But at the end of the day, you're still got to be accountable.
Yep. And it's not about how well Kevin Sheedy coaches or plays, because he's not playing or coaching. He's now overseeing the football department side of things. And if that football department's failing, technically, he must be made accountable for that. He's in charge of it at board level. It's a bit like Paddy Kinnersley at Carlton. She's now a vice president. That was the punishment that she got, right, for having overseen a failed AFLW program.
Absolutely.
She went from board member to vice president. That was her punishment.
Sure. But no one looks at what these people...
Oh, dear. Have you ever heard anyone at the Carlton board explain anything about the AFLW program and why it has been such a spectacular failure over the last 2 years?
I've only heard...
And an exodus of star players like we've never seen before?
I've only heard the excuses around why the players have all left based on the competition and the new teams rather than anything else. But look, we expect as members someone who's head of our program or a department to talk to that and talk about what they've done, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and what their vision is.
Yeah.
Is that too hard? I don't know. Am I expecting too much?
Obviously.
Regardless
anyway,
of
happen to know a former Carlton player, Carlton women's player, know her father, and she's no longer a Carlton player, but asked for why she left and why so many others had left, especially the really good quality players. The answer was simple. Toxic culture were the two words that he used. Not me. He used.
His words. Right.
His words. Yep. So, as we've always suspected, that's the main reason why players leave your club, especially if they're really good players. But anyway, there you go. All right. I think we've done enough for this week. We look forward to seeing you all next Sunday night. It's a pity that we won't be talking about any more Carlton games for season 2022. To a large degree, I feel it was shaping up as a really promising season, one that promised to deliver on our minimum expectation of making finals, as stated by our president, Luke Sayers, back in September last year.
Yep.
But ultimately, the club failed to deliver on the promise, and I think it's a wasted year. Myself, it's wasted, not completely, because obviously we've got 22 games to look back on and learn from, and that's going to be the ultimate test to see how much we've learnt from this season when we start playing 2023. But in itself, in isolation, to me, it's a wasted opportunity. Not a wasted season, but a wasted opportunity to play finals. And from that point of view, it's pretty disappointing that we ultimately failed to make it.
Absolutely. Very, very much so, especially considering the list profile and all of the years over the last few that we have been told that the list is good enough and ready to take the next step and beyond. Very disappointing. Have you, just for our viewers, just before we do sign off, you got any techniques, tactics, tips to sort of psychologically deal with this? Is it go and eat a block of chocolate? Is it turn off the TV, no media, a self-imposed media ban?
No.
Go drink a bottle of wine. I don't know. What are the
look.
Or should we actually watch it and make it as therapy? Watch the other teams play finals and we don't, just to make it.
I'm the type of person who loves watching football anyway, and I love watching the finals regardless of who's playing.
Yeah.
And let's face it, over the last 20 years, the vast majority of those seasons have been watching other sides play finals.
Correct.
Since 2001, the only seasons that we played finals in were 2009, 10, 11, and 13. That's it. That's 4 years out of the last 21.
And 13, we finished ninth.
That's four seasons out of the last 21 where we've actually made the finals. And by the way, 2013 was by default, but we'll put that aside. We've played 6 finals. We lost 2 elimination finals and won 2 elimination finals, and we lost 2 semi-finals. That's all we've got to show for the last 21 seasons. So, gee whiz, I hope they learn from what's happened this year and at least play finals next year, because I have to say, if Michael Voss can't find a way to get this list to produce enough wins to make finals next year, he's going to be skating on very, very thin ice. And the Carlton Hatchet program will go back into full swing, I dare say, in the 3rd year, if we don't make it then. But anyway, time will tell. No, not actually funny. Last week I dealt with a guy with Lifeline.
Yeah, well, I didn't mean to make a joke of all of that.
No. Look, some people do get really caught up in this, and I would say to people, look, put it in perspective. You shouldn't be suicidal because Carlton didn't make the finals. By all means, be disappointed. By all means, even be heartbroken. Even shed a tear like my son did today. But put it in perspective. It's sport. These players these days, I'm not saying that they don't care. I do think they care, but they're playing most of the time. They're playing for the money and the lifestyle and all that. It's a career, and it's a full-time thing for them.
Yep.
They're trying to make the most of their opportunities in a for what most of them will be probably a 5 to 8 year window.
Yep.
The really, really good players might play 10 years plus, but not too many do. It's amazing how few players actually make it past 10 years or even make it up to 10 years. So, there's a lot of players that play for 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 seasons and then get delisted or traded or go back into, normal society and don't go beyond 3 or 4 seasons. So it is a cutthroat industry. But back to the supporters, don't be too down about it. Yes, we did have some successes this year that we can, I guess, look back on, some of the really good wins that we had. But I think there's still a long way to go. And those deficiencies need to be addressed in the off-season. Yep. And if they're not addressed, again, we won't ultimately be good enough to win premierships unless we address them. You've got to have really everything going for you. You hear people talk about this all the time. You have to have everything going for you to win premierships, and a little bit of luck along the way too with injuries and stuff like that. But the whole club needs to be all in, all tuned into the same goal and tuned into the same radio station, if you like. So the same frequency. So
back in the day,
we can learn from what we've. Hopefully we can take the hurt out of today and use it as motivation for next year.
Back in the day too, right? Supporters probably lived in a part of a location in Melbourne, let's say the north or so forth. The players were, working and playing. So really, they're playing for extra money.
Work just to go to training, Steve.
Absolutely. So, but what it used to do I'm not suggesting it doesn't hurt the supporters as much now, but it was really tribal back then, and certainly hurt the players a lot more. These days, definitely elite sport. You hurt, but I wouldn't think it's anywhere as much as what it used to be. The players don't barrack for the club as much as play the game for the club.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
Indeed. All right. Well, thanks again for joining us this week, Steve. And thank you, everyone, for joining us on In the Blue Corner. We'll look forward to seeing you next Sunday night at 8 o'clock as we go through some more issues to do with the club and the AFL. So until then, go Blues in 2023.